Hello and welcome to another edition of Close Mode, the Enterprise Sales Show. I'm Brian Dietmeyer, CEO of Close Strong. And today I'm super lucky to be with my energetic pal, Chris Mills, who's the Chief Revenue Officer at ID.me. And if you don't know what ID.me is, I always feel like this is the part where I'm auditioning for the voiceover for ID.me. But they prove and share your identity online and give you access to government services and benefits in 500 retailers. I was snooping through the site the other day. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Glad to be here.
Actually, so truth be told, welcome to the show for the second time, because the first time our recording failed. So thank you for sharing your ideas and your insight a second time. So you and I, a couple of weeks ago, we're talking about sales process, and you had some really cool insight and I feel like we haven't talked enough about it on the show. So let's start kind of in a higher level. What's shifted in the kind of macro environment that impacts the way we look at sales process?
And I love it, right? A real softball right away, Brian. A macro environment and sales spread, like, wow, okay, awesome. Good entry. Listen, I think at ID.me, as you mentioned, we have a very important mission of protecting the United States citizens against all kinds of different threats. Yeah. But we also protect the benefits that they deserve.
Yeah.
So, right, one of those forgotten segments that people don't talk about is public sector. Yes. And so that's a very important segment to ID.me. Our public sector customers are amazing. At a macro, what's happening in public sector, number one, it's an election year. So it changes things, because you sit there and you look at sales processes. Okay, who's the sponsor? Who's our champion? Who's our economic buyer? And they may not have a place at the table come January, given where they are. And so you've got to be asking those unique questions in an election year that maybe you don't in otherwise. The other thing happening in public sector is customer experience. That's now moved to the forefront of a lot of public sector agency buying decisions. What's the customer or citizen experience? And so if you're not talking about that, and oh, by the way, it opens up new personas. So whereas before, right, you wouldn't find a customer experience officer in a public sector agency, local agency, et cetera. Now they're starting to pop up. So in your sales process, right, that's a new persona. Have we covered them in discovery, qualification, et cetera? Most of your listeners would obviously be more on the commercial and private sector side, where, of course, I think we're starting to see a shift of where the puck is going back to growth. But for the last 18 to 24 months, that macroeconomic climate has really pushed CFOs in charge of buying decisions. And I just, talking to a couple different private sector companies, anything above 75,000 had to get CFO buy-off. And it's like, holy cow. Yeah. So how does that apply to sales process? Like, you've got to be, number one, value. So I grew up in a Frank Slootman area of ServiceNow, where like it was, everything was moving a little faster. The pitches were faster, better than I had experienced before. So I really grew up with value selling. Dave Schneider, Kevin Haverty, those leaders there at ServiceNow. So it was all about value selling. So you learned about creating value. So you've got to, like, start looking at value. Are we creating value at stage 2, stage 3? If I see an opportunity at stage 3 that we're not in an active cycle to do a business value assessment or have a business value assessment already, and references that say, hey, for similar peers of yours, we created XYZ of value, then we're kind of slowing things down. Like, hey, listen, you need to bring value into, because it's eventually going to go to the CFO. After you've got value and you feel pretty good about it, then I really start focusing on power and plan. Two other pieces of questions and discovery that who's the power in this? Now, this is a hard one, right? It's like, oh, the buyer told me that they're the decision maker. Oh, fascinating, right? How did you qualify that? Like, well, what do you mean? Like, when was the last time they made a purchase of this size? And, a lot of times people buy things in 5, 6, 7, 8-year cycles, and we give the buyer too much credit because so many things have changed since the last time they bought a solution like this. We need to really qualify that buyer. Oh, really? And give them an out. Hey, we just sold, 2 or 3 of these to similar companies of your size and natures and personas, and they weren't able to make it. Now, they didn't know they weren't able to make it. Right. Things had changed underneath them, and they had to go to the CFO. Do you feel like that's how are you going to find that out, whether you actually are the buyer, right? And it's okay. It's, we feel like, oh, they told me they're the buyer. I don't feel comfortable pushing them. You have to, like, that's your job, right? And help them discover what their own internal buying processes are, right? So value, power, and then plan. Great, right? Now we understand the CFOs, the power here. What's the plan? And can I get it written down? And is it mutual? It's not, this is my sales, this is my plan. Well, that's great. It's your plan. What's the customer's plan? Is it a mutual plan? And can we get that in writing? It is something we've just got to do in a tougher macroeconomic environment.
Yeah, I was just fortunate to be at the Strategic Account Management Association conference yesterday, and did a couple sessions talking with groups of SAM leaders, and the discussion was the world has shifted. Much of the old stuff that we're flinging at the wall just isn't sticking anymore. Like, we lived in this environment of expansion, and now someone said, we used to have 4 to 6x funnel to make our number. Now we're at 2x. So, and that impacts sales process as well. And you said something on our previous call about, the goal used to be, right, we need a more systemic sales process with entry and exit gates. And then it's like, okay, guess what? Now in today's world, we need a sales process that's dynamic. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and it's a lot of semantics there, Brian, right? What is a sales process? Well, I think I've used the same sales process for 20 some years in terms of stage 1 is this, stage 2 is this, 3, like that's as a name. But inside of that, that's where we need to be way more dynamic. To your point, like in 2000, when I started in sales, you would have one product release a year. Okay, right? These are the new features or the new solutions that we're going to take to market. Here's the persona that we're going to sell to. Here's the value that we're going to create from go. And so you build the playbook, and it was pretty stagnant, to your point. And then the next sales kickoff the next year, like you maybe do some adjustments to that. But now, because all of these variables have to be taken into account, and we all know, the cliches, like changes is just, it's constant. But the speed of change is what is changing now faster and faster than ever. And so when you have a customer say, hey, it'd be great if I could do this feature or have this kind of a report, et cetera, and then we quickly pull back and say, hey, product teams, is this something that most of our customers would get advantage of, or is this going to be a one-off for this customer? Mm-hmm. And if it's kind of the 60 to 70%, let's go, let's develop it. And 3 weeks later, you're sitting there with a new feature that needs to be now enabled and trained and talked about to other customers because they're inevitably going to find value in it. So just the product changes and how fast we can now reiterate and develop code and develop features and functionality that provide value, that changes how you do things. But, all of those things, from financial situation, now some industries are better than others right now. So how is that changing? CFOs are controlled here, but it's more growth over on this side. They're still expanding. So how do you look at different industries, different personas inside of those? As I talked about in public sector, new personas. So now there's AI hitting all of these companies, and these companies are being forced to do something with AI. So typically there's an AI leader. All right, somewhere inside the company, maybe that's whom you're selling to. That's a new persona that you didn't have just a year ago. Inside of security, so cybersecurity, right? CISO, like that, he used to have a small team. Well, now he has a big team, right, with new personas. And so how does that change your sales process? So you just got to be dynamic. How you be dynamic is you're just going to be myopic. Like every deal you win, you got to say, okay, and again, right, Dave Schneider, Kevin Haverty, like just beat this into us. Who won, right? Why do we win? Why they buy us? Why they buy us now? And right, what value are they expecting to get out of it? And so every win, you sit there and say, okay, who bought? Is it a persona? What persona was the actual? Okay, that's interesting. That's a new one. Does that apply to all of these other opportunities? We may need to start multi-threading in a different way, right? Why did they buy? Right? Is there something going on in the industry? Is there something going on with that company specifically? Does that apply to others? Why they buy us? Ooh, like that's a new differentiation. Maybe I didn't even know. They saw us in a different way. Okay, how do I apply that? Why they buy us now? Is there something, macro, micro going on in the industry? Like, why now? Like, we've had that in the funnel for 4 years. Like, why now? That's weird, right? And does that apply to others? And then what value are they expecting to get? Is there a new value equation that is going on from a CFO or that industry? And so just like, you constantly, by the way, if you're not asking about your wins, which everyone loves to ask about, right? Because that's easy, then someone else lost, right? Someone else typically lost in those situations. They're asking why they lost.
Right.
And if they find out new persona and you didn't adapt, right? A new persona, if they find out why now, if they find out why us, if they find out all these things and they adapt, but we haven't adapted, we're going to lose the next one. And so it's just one of those things you got to constantly be asking, like, why do we win? Why do we lose? Are there new changes I need to make to the playbooks, right? Et cetera. So that's what's exciting about this role, right?
Yeah, well, you hit on a couple things that are so right on. The speed of change, like you mentioned that, and I have one of my advisors talk about it's not about competing or selling at the speed of change. And I talked to a VP of sales who said the equivalent of annual planning now happens quarterly, and now it's probably even faster than that. So, like speed of change connected to dynamic. Everything is real time. One of my favorite and very sad books business book is written by Rita Hunter McGrath, who the title of the book is The End of Competitive Advantage. So for those of us who do what we do, that's a very depressing title. But the point she made was, it's kind of that annual planning thing that we used to go, okay, here's what we got, here's where we sit in the market, boom. Let's execute the plan. We'll go visit it next year. And what she said is everything's changing so quickly. Customer needs, competitive positions, your value, that she said we now need to learn to compete on a series of short-term transient advantages. And most of our systems and our thought process are not set up to catch these. And how do we monetize? Like we have this shift in this moment. How are we going to monetize that? We've got about a minute and a half to get that thing out to market and have words coming out of people's mouths to monetize it. But I completely agree with you. It's everywhere.
No, I love that. I frankly love to hire salespeople from commodity industries, right? Really mature industries, because they have to do this. One little thing makes all the difference, right? To show an advantage, and it's dependent on sales. So it's job security for sales, good salespeople, good sales leaders, because they can be that change agent to really drive that change.
Yeah, I remember asking an EVP of a Fortune 50 who acquired a massive competitor in Europe and expanded their footprint globally. And I said, how long before words are coming out of reps' mouths to monetize that investment? And he said, probably 9 months. Just can't. And this was 7-8 years ago. And that, in today's market, those shifts are happening always. And then you go back to sales process, and as you said, even that the high level stages are one thing, but the detail underneath. What needs to shift at a micro level right here because of this thing that just happened?
No, that's it. And, it's awesome for us to sit here and pontificate and talk about it. I've got this, anxiety right now just talking about it, going, oh crap, I know I can, I probably should have done better yesterday. You know what I mean? Like
right.
there's gaps, right? So, don't feel bad. Everybody has them, right? So
what do you think, what mistakes are people making with sales process? Like where do we spend too much time or not enough? How would you characterize that?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, I've got my little sales, process thing right here. Discovery is a single stage. That's bullshit. At the end of the day, like that's not right. You should be discovering and qualifying in every stage. You can never discover enough. You can never qualify enough when you're doing the demo, right? You should be discovering. You should be qualifying. You should be doing on site. And to your point, I've got 2x coverage. Well, I happen to have better than that, thankfully, knock on wood. But companies are having 2x coverage, and that's just what it is right now, given the buying cycles. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, that means, right, that I need to get the most out of what I have. And so I got to be really myopic. I got to be really detailed. I got to really dive into the multi-threading, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think we spend, typical, right? I think every sales leader will tell you this, right? We spend way too much time in the proposal late stage. We don't spend enough in discovering, right? I had a great sales leader in 2000 who like, I was shocked. I came out of the Air Force and I couldn't believe how much money we paid salespeople. Like it was unbelievable. Like I'm going to go into sales. It was just like crazy money. And I remember having a conversation in the first couple of weeks. I was like, gosh, sales is a really lucrative career. And he had the vision at that time to mentor me, saying, Chris, the salesperson is the least expensive person in the entire company when they win.
Yeah.
And so the key is you can't lose. Well, that's impossible. You're going to lose. And so the key is to lose fast. And so to your point, like, how do you lose fast? Well, you have a set of criteria that you're looking for, and you see these folks who like have 2x pipeline and their boss is pushing them for 3x. They don't qualify out. And so now you're just sitting there dealing with an opportunity that's just not going to win. But you're spending time and you're bringing in other resources from the company to spend more time on an opportunity that's not going to win. You should have qualified it out and moved on, right? So we got to get better. We got to get better at really qualifications. What you can't do, it's really expensive and it's an end of a sales career, is to lose slow.
Yeah.
You just can't do it.
Yep.
And so, right, we like to, right, we can always do better at it. We like to really reward losing fast. It's as good as winning slow. Right? It really is.
It's making good decisions, which is a whole nother podcast we could have about empowering people to make those kind of decisions. But in building out Close Strong, we interviewed executives, revenue and sales executives and sales enablement pros at 60 different companies. And it's amazing to me. And you just touched on both of these two kind of basics. One is qualify. I had a bunch of execs say to me, you know what I was saying? So talk to me about your pipe. Talk to me about your forecast. What are you frustrated with? And they're like, I'm called in to get these deals closed, and we shouldn't have gone after these pieces of crap in the first place. So it's you just said it, and we heard that loud and clear. The other thing you talked about was discovery. That everybody was frustrated with discovery. You know, how can you put a sort of winning offer on the table of why me unless you've done the proper discovery? And it's still there. And those, I mean, qualification is probably similar, but I do agree with you. Discovery has changed radically in this market because stuff is shifting so quickly. There's so many buyers, like it's constant, ongoing. And I'm curious how you feel about this. We were talking yesterday at this conference about guided discovery. You know, the old days of, hey, Chris, what keeps you awake at night? You know, blah blah blah. And now but now leading with guided discovery to say, I've got 10 business problems that I want to talk to you about that similar customers have. You know, and we know we can solve those. And I'm wondering how you feel about the evolution of discovery in this market.
Listen, I'll give props to the same firm that I've used over and over again since ServiceNow, called Visualize. They do value selling, but 80% of the training is doing exactly this. And now, right, I know it like the back of my hand. I hope all my salespeople now know it like the back of their hand. They enter a discovery process with some very, like, you know, it's an art. It's an art
yes.
as to how you do discovery without pissing off, you know, the person. You've got to do this nice dance of giving them credibility as to why they should open up to you, at the same time asking the hard, good questions that move them down the path. You know, you can sit there and say, all right, like, hey, we're the best product because X, Y, and Z, et cetera, et cetera. They might get a little bit of that, but you haven't built the credibility. They're not going to get all of that. It's far better to go off and, number one, figure out what problems they're trying to solve, what business issue they're trying to attach to, and then let them self-discover why you are the best.
Yes.
Right. And you know, you can throw PowerPoints and fancy demos, et cetera, but if they haven't self-discovered why you're the best, you're not getting across. You're not communicating. Right.
Yep.
So they really teach a scripted way to do this. What's the business issue? Business issue has a hard dollar value, financial impact, and a time. Right. Yep. So if I'm always asking, hey, what's the business issue we're solving? And if I don't get both of those, well, let's go back to the drawing board. We don't have enough to really attach to get this deal done. Then I move to problems, keeping them from getting to that business issue. Right. Hey, what's the problems keeping you? By the way, and at any point in time, that customer, that prospect is going to be like, hey, wait a minute, who the hell are you? Like, what's up with the 20 questions? And you got to be ready to be like, hey, you're right. My apologies. You know, we met with your peer over at company XYZ, and they had this problem to keeping them from getting to the business issue. Is that something you guys have? So what did I do there? I built credibility with my statement that I solved this problem for them. And at the same time, I got back into discovery, but it was a dance. And that's a real art that, you know, you've got to work on. So now I do problems and I clean the plate, what they call clean the plate there. And then I move over to solutions. And it's not my solution. It's what do they believe the solution is to solve those problems, to fix their business issue. And then I move to value. Hey, have you done any work around, if I were to solve these problems or a company were to solve these problems, I don't even know if I can. right? Again, I've just kind of built a consultative mindset in them. I'm not selling them anything. I don't know if I can solve these problems or not yet. But if we were to solve these problems or someone else, have you done any value recognition as to what that is to you to solve that business issue? Oh, by the way, value exists in two ways, business and personal. So that's a business value, Brian. But gosh, Brian, like, is there personal value? If you were to solve this and hit that business, here's the personal value for you. Yeah. Now you're into like, ooh, pathos, ethos, logos, right? Like, boom, now you're into it. And then you move into power and plan. Great. I've got your business, I got your problems, I got your solutions, the value. And by the way, I'm going to help you create that value. If you allow me, we can help do some things here. And then who's going to make this decision? Is it you, Brian? Is it someone else, right? So you're really qualified, as I talked about power. And then, great, what do you want to do next, right? What do you want to do next? And by the way, like, I've found the best way, if you want to solve this business issue, these are the steps you need to take in this purchase decision, right? You got to guide them. You got to lead them, right? That's our job. So right, that scripted discovery, that should be happening, right? If I look at my Gong calls and I put those keywords in, I'm asking Gong, did my sales team do this? Have they followed this discovery? Are we asking the right way? Are we dancing appropriately? Are they getting shut down? How are they handling it? Right. But we've got to get that information. It might not happen all in the same call, right? But we got to go back to it. And then, by the way, that's for every persona. So now, right, enterprise decisions are being made by 6, 7 different groups inside a company. It's not just one. And so now I've got to do that for 6 or 7 different entities inside of an organization.
And those questions, it's funny as I'm hearing you talk through this, you talked about, the 20 questions. What the hell, dude? You're killing me with the 20 questions. But it's the words we use now, it's like, I just like a doc, I cannot prescribe a solution until I've diagnosed your problem. And so I think discovery is morphing into a diagnostic sort of process, which is different than, and this is what I'm hearing you say. It's like, I've got to get in and diagnose. And it's more of a consultant approach, right? Of diagnosing that problem. That, like, to me, that's what I'm hearing you talk about.
100%. Marketing, and my CEO, Blake Hall, right? Kudos to him. Like, marketing has become education, right? Sales has become consulting. So marketing goes out and educates the market as to who you are, what you do, what value you bring. Then our job as sales is to get out there and understand what problems you're trying to solve, right? And then match a solution to that. And listen, this is where that qualification comes in. Hey, listen, you're trying to solve some problems. I don't think I have the best solution for it. I really appreciate it. You should go reach out to these couple companies, right? Oh my God, you got a customer for life that later on, right, you're going to be fine, right? But that's just what you have to do.
It's such great insight into discovery. I mean, we often start the conversation with that, saying, I don't know if I have anything to sell you, but I've got to build enough credibility to then get in and do that diagnostic work. So I need to lean in a little bit, and I feel that you allow people to lean in a little when you're saying, I don't know if I have anything for you yet, but let me do this work. So I love hearing that.
And I see too many people using marketing slides and marketing slogans and the education. The best way to build credibility is how you solved problems for that persona that existed in your other customers. And that's why if I step back a little bit on our conversation, there's another sales stage that I put into sales, which is onboarding and go live. So that's a process. And if our salespeople aren't following how people onboarded, how they go live, and then validate the value that we thought we were going to get when we sold the deal, like I do a business value assessment up front, pre-sales, then I validate the value 6-9 months after with that customer. Hey, Mr. Customer, I'm not going to drop you on our head. This is SaaS. Right? Yeah. I'm not going to drop you off your head. I'm not successful unless you're successful, unless you're using the product and you're consuming. So we're in the boat together. We have aligned incentives. And 9 months later, 6 months later, we're going to be back with customer success. We're going to validate the value you got. More importantly, it becomes a wonderful sales motion when you don't have that pipeline, when you don't have the funnel, because that's where cross-sells and upsells happen. That's where I take those credibility stories of validating the value and I go back and I start doing discovery with them in other places. By the way, we just went live with John, and John had these problems, and this is what we did for him. And now he's getting, a 4-month return on investment with these exact solutions that you said you need.
Yeah.
So the only way I know that is because I was there during onboarding, I was there during go live, and I saw them get successful. Right.
Yeah. And what you make me think of, and I think it's a really good shift, the Sales Enablement Society just rebranded to the Revenue Enablement Society, which is kind of what you're talking about. It's like, all right, we sold something, cycle's done, right? No, when it's revenue enablement, that cycle is a living, breathing cycle. And it's funny, we coached $1 billion in renewals at probably Fortune 10. And the most common reaction was, why do you want me to renew? I'm not using half the crap you sold me a year ago, which is like, that's you. Yeah, you just cannot do that anymore. So you talked a little bit about not only designing sales process, but redesigning maybe real time, about leveraging data. So and I know that there's a lot, right? So we probably have drowning in more than we need today, but what do you think are the 2 or 3 key data points that impact sales process?
Yeah, I love it. I'll take the opportunity to give a plug to my amazing RevOps leader, AJ. AJ came to me after a long hiring process to try to find someone. And if you get a good RevOps leader, it's a cheat code. It's a cheat code. So, they come in, they clean up Salesforce, they put in the best tech stack possible. They're really driving, right, the go-to-market strategy. So she's not only my RevOps leader, she's my chief of staff, which is fascinating, right? Because I was like, hey, AJ, I need you to, whoa, I got some fireworks going.
Right.
Cool.
Well, that was in honor of AJ.
I appreciate that. Nice job, AJ. So right, if you get them both in the same role, like sometimes I just have to remember, like, AJ, I need you to put your chief of staff hat on. Like, if this is a tough conversation I need to have cross-functionally or whatever. But for the most part, they're one and the same for a chief revenue officer is to have that VP of RevOps. So, the data points that we're really driving, and frankly, it's the board, right? So, we're a Series D company looking to do some fantastic things over the next 18 months. And in order to do that, we got to ask for money and show that the money that they've given us is proving out in a good investment. Yeah. And so we publish a go-to-market tracker every month to the board of IDMe that says, here's the investment that you gave us. Here's all the new reps that we hired from a coverage plan standpoint. Here's the days in market they are. Here's how they're ramping. Here's their pipeline. Here's their enablement scores. Here's their, wins. Here's their, performance against quota by name, right? And I've told my team, I was like, hey, your name is going to the board every month. And it's my job to make you efficient and make you effective, right? Those are things that we didn't necessarily have to do for 10 plus years in sales, is CAC, right? Cost to acquire a customer, or a magic number. So I'm seeing a lot of boards, a lot of investments, a lot of public sector companies, public, traded companies saying, hey, it's either CAC or magic number. What do you follow? And for 10 plus years, we didn't. It was all about growth, right. Hire into it. Well, now we got to get more efficient. So I look at CAC. I look at magic number as a data. CFOs helping me look at that every day. And then, how do we get more efficient? And so it's stage progression. Are deals staying in stages longer than they should? Am I driving down stage progression? Am I driving up conversion rates? Am I driving up average, sale? Right. Yeah. And so we're constantly looking at that by segment, by industry, like chopping it all kinds of different ways, building this graph of data so that we can see, in strategic changes, right? We took one of our segments and we moved them to more of an enterprise-based focus. I took, sales folks that had 200 accounts. We moved them. Hey, sorry, this year you're having 40 accounts, 40 to 50 accounts. And of course, like, mutiny on your hands, like, oh my God, like there's no way I'm going to make my number. Turns out everybody's crushing their number. Why? Because of focus. Because of focus, right? Now they only have these. They have a defined playbook. They're building solid account plans. They're able to run proper sales process. And so we're seeing sales cycles go up, which is expected. You move them to an enterprise sales motion with bigger accounts, but we're also seeing the dollar values go up. We're seeing their coverage go up. So it's those kind of things like, hey, I implemented this strategic change. What do I expect to happen? Well, I expect sales process to take longer. Deal cycle is going to expand, but we're going to make that up because we're going to do $1 million deals now versus $50,000 deals that have a high likelihood to churn a year from now. Like, who cares? So, right, it's those kind of things that and unfortunately, to your point, it's a lot. Like, what are the important ones? And then nailing that, putting it into a spreadsheet, revisiting it every day. What kind of changes do I need to make based on what I'm seeing?
Yeah, it's funny too, because those who listen to the show, I'm a huge fan of slow down to hurry up, and that's just what you spoke about, right? It's like, okay, there's going to be this hiccup. We're going to go from 400 to 40, and there's going to be this hiccup, but then boom, that's where and people only hear the slow down. They miss the hurry up part, which is the $1 million deal you just got.
Right.
And it's like,
you're the officer of no, you're there's no way, like, all this stuff. And it's like, trust me, right? Like,
yeah.
go talk to a race car driver, right? Go talk to, like, we're going to go fast. It's fine.
So I want to get into the weeds on my last question here. I've looked at a lot of sales processes and entry and exit criteria, and I feel like so many of those things are over engineered. So and difficult. Like, I look at some of these and it's like, this is a research project for a rep to like evidence this out. What's your advice on like making that a little more efficient and effective? The whole exit and entry criteria.
Well, I can talk through it. I don't know that I have a silver bullet on this one either, Brian, but I think, and again, right. And I laminate these things, right? My ex-boss, Craig Pratt, was the king of lamination. You'd show up and he'd bring out all his laminates and say, hey, blah, blah, blah. But on the back of this are all the different, like, you can see that.
Right.
It's crazy, right? Entry and exit criteria. We've got some medic in there. We got like all this stuff. And this is that balance. And if I'm not having salespeople kind of complain every now and then, saying, hey, Chris, like, this deal's stuck in 2 because I don't have this, and they're not allowing, RevOps isn't allowing me to move it to 3 because I don't. It's like, let's talk about that, right?
Yeah.
And it provides a wonderful discussion. And it's like, okay, I'll let it go to 3. We're going to overlook that particular one. I'll provide you an exception because you have X, Y, and Z, and et cetera. But for the most part, I lean on RevOps, right? Their job is to make sure that the forecast accuracy is good. They have, forecast accuracy as their main KPI. Of course, salespeople don't necessarily get rewarded or et cetera for forecast accuracy. They get rewarded and compensated for bookings. And so it's that healthy friction that is okay, right? Like, it's okay. And so it's just that constant argument. Sometimes I have to ask RevOps to be a little more lenient. Let's pull back on a couple things, but I like what you're doing there. I got to go back to the salesperson and say, hey, sorry, like, we're going to have to hold the line on that one. That's a very important thing. And here's why, right? These last 3 deals, they got this in stage 2. Or, hey, those last 2 losses we had, we didn't have that data point.
Yes.
And so I can't let any more go forward until you get the data point, right? So there's no silver bullet. I don't think it's got to be your own individual situation, and you've got to create healthy friction. It's okay. It's okay.
Yes.
Right?
Well, you spoke. My last question is leaning on a baseball analogy you gave me, in a baseball kind of coaching analogy, and running those meetings, the pipeline review meetings. What's your thoughts on like sort of best practice for running those? Because I know there's a lot of just pure auditing that happens in those, and that not sure that provides a lot of value to anybody.
And over Zoom, like, maybe it was different when you're in person. I doubt it, but over Zoom it's even tougher. I don't want to talk about my other conference like WebEx. I don't want to just Zoom is Zoom right now, but you to the baseball analogy, played a lot of baseball in my life. Was fortunate enough to play in college, but the best baseball coaches I had growing up were those that during batting practice, everyone was still involved. So, right, the worst ones, there's one guy up there or gal, if they're playing softball, et cetera, getting their swings and getting their hacks. Everyone else is picking their nose, picking their buddy's nose, talking about what they're going to do on the weekend, like, staring into space, chasing butterflies. It's ridiculous. It's like an hour of wasted time, and everyone gets, 5 minutes of value. That's what I'm viewing most pipeline reviews are. You got one person on the hot seat. And unfortunately, what's fascinating is, like, the one person on the hot seat is the one that has the deal, that built the quota, that built the pipeline, that like whatever. This person that doesn't have the pipeline, doesn't have the coverage, doesn't have the deal, he's just like, he's off the hook. We're putting so much pressure on that one person, right? So it's like, how do you do that? Well, it's a combination of, hey, I like to do a lot of those one-on-one. So we're just reviewing the pipeline and talking about best practices when we're in pipeline reviews. What did we learn, right? Who bought, how did they buy, why did they buy, where are you at in the stage process, et cetera. And it's hard over Zoom. You're watching because everybody's multitasking. It's like, hey, listen, did everybody catch that? Kind of like the professor giving the foot stomp, right? It's like, hey, this might be on the test, foot stomp. And everyone's like, what was he saying? Like, so it's like, hey guys, did everybody catch that? Right? That's a new persona, right?
Yeah.
If you're not taking a note, and you just got to call folks out. It's like, guys, I don't see you writing stuff down. Like, you write this down, right? We just learned something here in this deal review, opportunity review, like go. And then, do one-on-ones around, the real opportunities, your top 10 opportunities of the week, month, quarter, whatever your cadence is. Do those really specific one-on-one, because then you can go deep, and not everyone's going to get a lot of value out of that. So take the time, efficiency, and use it to your advantage. But where things can be learned as a group, you got to do it, right?
So yeah, I will, and I mean this sincerely. It's a really interesting and cool time to be doing what we're doing, because intellectually, like it's sort of like we need maybe not a brand new playbook, but we need a severely adjusted playbook, given the two things that we've hit on today, which is speed and dynamic reacting to it. So you've been super, super generous with your time and your ideas twice. So thank you. Thank you for coming back. And I think we even did better the second time. So I really appreciate it. You're adding a lot to this community, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's been super fun. Enjoy it.